My absolute pleasure. Welcome back. Very excited to see you back on the television.
I'm glad to be here, but you know, I'm here only because I applied for a job as a correspondent on The Daily Show, and yourself turned me down.
We have standards. Anybody with the kind of journalism experience and professionalism that you have displayed over these years cannot work for my program.
You've said many times, I don't want to be a journalist. I'm not a journalist.
And we're not.
But you're acting like one. You've assumed that role. The young people who work with me now think they get better journalism from you than they do from the Sunday morning talk show.
I can assure them they're not getting any journalism from us. We are, if anything, I do believe we function as a sort of editorial cartoon. That we are a digestive process, like so many other digestive processes that go on. The thing about, there's a lot of talk of young people get this from you, young people get that from you. People are very sophisticated consumers of information, and they're pulling all different things. It's the same argument that people say about the blogs. The blogs are irresponsible. No, they're not. The blogs are like anything else. You judge each one based on its own veracity and intelligence and all that. And if you'd like, you could cherry pick only the things that you agree with from various things, or if you want, you can try and get a broader perspective, or you can find people who are absolutely out of their minds, or find people that are doing incredibly complex and interesting and urgent journalism. And the same goes for our show. It's a prism into usually people's own ideologies when they watch our program. This is just our take.
But it is interesting, sometimes you'll start a riff, or you'll start down the path of a joke, and it's about Bush or about Cheney, and the audience will get it. Your live audience will get it. They'll start applauding, even before they know the punchline. And I'm thinking, okay, they get it. That's half the country. What about the other half of the country? Are they paying attention? They don't care. They wouldn't listen to the joke. If they did, they wouldn't get it.
Well, I do think that sense of humor goes as far as your ideology. I think that ultimately we have very interesting reactions on our show. People are constantly saying, I love your show is so funny, until you made a joke about global warming, which is a serious issue, and I can't believe you did that, and I'm never watching your show again. People don't understand that we're not warriors in their cause. We're a group of people that really feel that they want to write jokes about the absurdity that we see in government and the world and all that, and that's it. It's kind of astonishing. There is... I used to have a real disconnect, I think, with the administration. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I think it's suddenly become clear to me. They would rather us believe them to be wildly incompetent and inarticulate than to let us know anything about how they operate. And so they do constitutionally mandated things most of the time, but they fulfill the letter of their obligation to checks and balances, but not the intent. For instance, Alberto Gonzales, and you've been watching the hearings, he is either a perjurer or a low-functioning pinhead. And he allowed himself to be portrayed in those hearings as a low-functioning pinhead rather than give the congressional committee charged with oversight any information as to his decision-making process at the Department of Justice. And I used to think, they're doing this based on a certain arrogance. And now I realize that it's because they believe there is one accountability moment for a president, and that is the 4-year election. And once you get that election, you're done.
They're right, are they not?
They're completely not right. The election moment is merely the American public saying, we'd rather you be president than that guy. That's it. The next 4 years, though, you still have to abide by the oversight process that is there to prevent this kind of bizarre sort of cult-like atmosphere that falls along. I mean, I accept that kind of veil of secrecy around Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes, but I don't accept that around our government.
Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of words were written about Gonzalez's testimony last week in Congress. And I still don't think a lot of people get it. And all of a sudden there on The Daily Show that evening, you distilled the essence of it.
Types of interviews, because I have a great respect for Senator McCain, and I hate the idea that our conversation became just two people sort of talking over each other at one point. But I also, in my head, thought I would love to do an interview where it's just sort of deconstructed the talking points of Iraq. Sort of the idea of, is this really the conversation we're having about this war? That if we don't defeat al-Qaeda in Iraq, they'll follow us home. That to support the troops means not to question that the surge could work. That what we're really seeing in Iraq is not a terrible war, but in fact, just the media's portrayal of it. So I wanted to just go through, like, is this really the conversation that we're going to be having about something as significant as this war?
I mean, he's been on your show.
Well, he didn't believe me. I think anybody who's been in a POW camp for 5 years can take 8 minutes on The Daily Show. But
something happened. You saw it happen to him.
What you saw was evasive action. It wasn't shriveling. It was merely...
But he dropped his head, and you could actually...
He stopped connecting and just looked at my chest and decided, I'm just going to continue to talk about honor and duty, and the families should be proud, and all the things that are cudgels emotionally to keep us from the conversation, but things that weren't relevant to what we were talking about.
So many people seem to want just what you did. Somebody to cut through the talking points and get our politicians to talk candidly and frankly. I mean, I know you have
Not that many people. We've seen our ratings. Some people want it. A couple of people downloaded from iTunes.
But it was this time, this moment, this week that you decided coming back to him.
Well, it's also at the fore now because the Senate and the House are working on timetables, which, by the way, who knows if that's an issue either. But it's, again, the conversation that the Senate and the House are having with the president was very similar to the conversation that McCain and I were having, which was two people talking over each other and nobody really addressing the underlying issues of what kind of country do we want to be moving forward in this? And it's not about being a pacifist or suggesting that you can never have a military solution to things. It's just that it appears that this is not the smart way to fight this threat.
Your persistence and his inability to answer without the talking points did get to the truth, that there's a contradiction in what's going on in Vietnam. There's a contradiction. Exactly. There's a contradiction in what's going on in that war that they can't talk about.
That's right. There's an enormous contradiction, and it is readily apparent if you just walk through simple sort of logic and simple rational points. But the thing that they don't realize is that everyone wants them to come from beyond that contradiction so that we can all fix it. Nobody is saying we don't have a problem. Nobody is saying that 9/11 didn't happen. What they're saying is, we're not a fragile country. Trust us to have this conversation so that we can do this in the right way, in a more effective way.
Why aren't we having that conversation? I mean, that's a very good point.
Why are we not?
Why is the country not having this conversation, the kind of conversation that requires the politicians who are responsible for the war to be specific to the concerns of the American people? I mean, they do come on, and a kind of gauze goes up.
Because I don't think politics is any longer about a conversation with the country. It's about figuring out how to get to do what you want, the best way to sell the product that you want to put out there, but not necessarily for the product's own. You know, it's sort of like when a dishwashing soap, you know, and they want to make a big splash, and so they decide they have more lemon, as though people are going to be like, that has been the problem with my dishes, not enough lemon scent.